The islands of Fiji to our 3:30 presentation. We're very, very happy to have you here with us. We hope you are enjoying your day so far. Yeah. All right, thank you. This is going to be a 20 minutes presentation. In this 20 minutes, we'll be sharing with you a story on how we came about into the Pacific. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, let me just greet you with our greeting word in Fiji. We say Mbola Vinaka. Try that, say Mbola Vinaka. Mbola Vinaka. It means greetings and good health to you. Very briefly, very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we are located about 3,200 miles southwest of Hawaii. That's a 6-hour plane ride from Honolulu, Hawaii, all the way down to Fiji. Fiji is made up of over 333 islands. It is the largest group of islands in Polynesia. Sizes of these islands are much larger than the Hawaiian Islands. We have a population of 1 million people, 55% native Fijians, the rest mixed races. All kinds of people have come and settled in Fiji over the last 150 years. A lot of Indians from India, we have a lot of Asians, we have Europeans and other Pacific Islanders. In 1874, after many hundreds of years of tribal warfare and rivalries between chiefs, and within kingdoms within the Fiji group of islands, our people decided to lay down their weapons and they ceded our islands to Her Majesty Queen Victoria of Great Britain and her descendants. October 10th, 1970, we gained our independence. Legacy left by the British, English is still used today as the official language. Not the primary language, but the official language. In the Fijian language, there's more than 30 languages and dialects spread across the 333 islands. And lastly, this might interest you to know that the international dateline runs through Taveuni, the third largest island in Fiji. International dateline, timeline separating today from tomorrow. If you have any questions on Fiji, ladies and gentlemen, take it home with you. Just kidding. See me right after this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax and enjoy this presentation as we share with you this story of how we came into the Pacific. About 4,000 years ago, the southern and eastern Pacific Islands were completely uninhabited. Any evidence of human existence existed only in the western fringes of the Pacific, in places like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Tasmania, islands that are referred to today as Melanesia. Scientific evidence has proven the fact that they have been in these islands for more than 20,000 years. They were a hunter-gatherer society, lived in small villages and small family units, isolated from the rest of the population.
Domoni kuru edatibi, imini liva, mewa karaida, mewa karaida, mewa karaida.
Around 2500 BC, these islanders were suddenly replaced by a new branch of humanity. These newcomers intrepidly stormed through the region, pushing east towards the rising sun. They were fierce warriors and great seafarers, building and sailing on huge double-hull canoes that carried 200 to 300 people. They brought with them a new culture, a new language that was rooted in the Austronesian language that evolved out of Southeast Asia and spoken today in the eastern Pacific Islands. They were a polytheistic society, practiced animism and built sacred temples of worship like this one. The high priest has just offered prayers on behalf of the people, asking the gods to bless the chiefs and the people with power and strength. Notice that the temple is highly elevated. The belief was the taller the structure, the closer the communication with the ancestral gods. The gods have granted the people and their chiefs blessings. These newcomers introduced a social hierarchy system where chiefly titles were inherited by bloodline, and high chiefs were believed to be descendants of ancestral gods. Our chief wears the liku voi voi. This is the skirt made from dried pandanus leaves. Around his arms and ankles he wears the vesa, braided from the fibers of the coconut husk. He wears the mother pearl shell around his neck, holds a war club in his hands. These are symbols of power and authority in the islands of Fiji. He invites his people to dance to Tura, depicting the arrival of this newfound land. As these newcomers settle the coastal areas of the larger islands of Fiji, they continue to live and practice traditions they brought with them. Things like the making of bark cloth called masi from the paper mulberry plant, the weaving of mats and baskets from dried pandanus leaves. Today, the art of making this bark cloth, mats and baskets is still being practiced all throughout Polynesia. But there is one unique tradition that is no longer practiced today in Polynesia, and that is the art of making pottery. These clay potteries were known as lapita pottery. This lapita pottery is a low-fired earthen pottery tempered with shell and sand. It is typically decorated with motifs that are unique and can be found today in many Polynesian art, such as tattoos and bark cloth. Our performers dance to Tulikuro, a dance that depicts the making of this pottery, the history behind it, and how the art form is still treasured today in Fiji. The pottery dance. Now, sherds and fragments of this lapita pottery have been uncovered throughout Polynesia in places like Nukuleka in Tonga, Mulifanua in Upolu Samoa, and Tahiti in French Polynesia. Now, hundreds of years later, after the lapita culture and its people integrated into the new environment and established themselves as the dominant people, the polished and decorated tooth of a sperm whale became the most valued and highly prized cultural item in Fijian society. It is called the tambua. The tambua or whale's tooth were presented as a gift of atonement or esteem and were important in negotiations with rival chiefs. It is also used in a traditional ceremony called dumudi, where the family of a male presents a tambua asking for a father for his daughter's hand in marriage. What you're about to witness is a marriage proposal made by a rival chief to the high chief of the host village for his daughter's hand in marriage. These marriage proposals are usually done to solidify and forge alliances. This ceremony begins with the beating of the wooden drum, calling for people to assemble and await the arrival of the visiting party. The visiting party arriving at the chiefly residence will call out, This is the highest form of respect that chiefs accord to each other, acknowledging rank and titles. The ceremony is observed with strict protocols. Only honorific language of chiefs and nobles are used in ceremonies such as this. The spokesperson of the rival chief will find a way to connect his chief to the host chief through an ancestral lineage before stating the purpose of this visit, which is the marriage proposal. Before accepting the marriage proposal, the host chief summons his daughter and informs her of the visitor's marriage proposal. The daughter, understanding the importance of the forging of this new alliance with the rival chief, has agreed to the marriage proposal. She has no choice. The father informs the visitors that they have accepted the marriage proposal and will go ahead with the preparation. This is followed by months and months of preparation, feasting, and other protocols that follows it. We present to you, ladies and gentlemen, the bridegroom-to-be, who will be getting married in about a couple of months' time. She is the daughter of the high chief of the village. She holds a iri, or a fan, made from the pandanus leaves. The frames are made out of bamboos. Around her neck, she wears the mbuli, or the white cowrie shell, and the markings on her face. These are all symbols of status in the islands of Fiji. Let's wish her all the best and good luck. Fijian history and oral traditions talks a lot about rivalries between chiefs and tribes, tribal warfare and conflicts between kingdoms. Christian missionaries documented some of these events as ferociously vicious and inhumane. Many weapons were used during these conflicts, such as the moto sai or spear, the ula or the short throwing club, the ula or the short throwing club is highly effective when your opponent is trying to escape. But the most commonly used weapon is the manda or iwau. This is used for close combat fighting and can do a lot of damage to the opponent. Our warriors perform to you Sabandungu, depicting some of these events in our history. At the beginning of the 19th century, the first Christian missionaries arrived in the islands, and our chiefs and their people were converted to the new faith. Temples were replaced by chapels and churches. New customs, traditions, and values were adopted and integrated with the old one. Bark, cloth, and grass skirts were no longer worn. It was reserved for traditional ceremonial functions. Instead, this became the formal attire. If you may remember, back in the days when the presentation of sperm whale's tooth were used to ask a father for his daughter's hand in marriage, today it is done only as a formality. What precedes that is a Western-styled marriage proposal. And this time she said yes from the bottom of her heart. This little hut to my left, ladies and gentlemen, belongs to our grandparents, a very important hut. It is more like a schoolhouse or place of learning. Here, it was more like a museum and archives. A lot of things were preserved in this little hut, things like our genealogy, history, language, culture. Since we did not have a written language, everything was preserved orally and passed down from one generation to another. We invite the women to do for you Vunilemba as they pay tribute to our grandparents and things that they've learned from this little hut. With the introduction of modern musical instruments like guitars and ukuleles, we dance and celebrate the contemporary songs like this. It is customary in the islands whenever we have guests or visitors like you leave our shores or leave our village, we'd gather and sing our farewell song, Isalay. Isalay has a lot of meanings, but today just simply means thank you very much. Like I've mentioned to you earlier on, ladies and gentlemen, you all being here have enabled all these performers the opportunity to work their way through school at the nearby Brigham Young University Hawaii campus. We will invite you to sing along with us in the chorus of our farewell song. You'll start off by swaying to the music. Left, right, left, right, left. As our performers wave their goodbyes to you, we invite you to sing with us in the chorus. It goes something like this. Isalay, sing. Nongurarawa, Niko sana, Voto e namataka. Oh, forget not, when you're so far away, precious moments besides precious moments besides
As the sun rises from the east and sets in the west, we are constantly reminded of our ancestors sailing through the open ocean and settling in Fiji 2,500 years ago. And that is our story, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation today as much as we've enjoyed presenting it to you. We say to you, Vinaka Vakalevu, Nisa Mole.